Greetings, Dr. Jeffrey Scott here, and this is my weekend market update. I'm doing this on Saturday, January, well, still the 24th, but almost Sunday the 25th, 2026. I'll just leave it at the 25th. I titled this one, Markets Rotate Back into Mags as the IWM sells off on Friday. The question is something sinister lurking underneath the surface? To me, it's about capital protection. I mentioned Thursday that I was going to buy some puts, or I had bought some puts for protection. It's for the main reason where at some point we're going to have a sell-off. It might not be this week, it might not be this month, but I'm going to try and be prepared for it so that I still have capital left when the market bottoms. And I may cover some of those puts, may have covered some of them already, but right now I'm still concerned about the U.S. markets. Again, my name is Jeffrey Scott. My email is marketmripro@gmail.com. My Google group is called Top Down Trader, and my website's marketmripro.com. This is for educational purposes only. Anything I talk about should be taken in the spirit of education and not investment advice. My videos are always intended to do one thing, and that's to demonstrate the tools and my tools of top-down analysis. Trading involves risk. You are solely responsible for any investment decisions you make. I may own or intend to buy or sell any stock mentioned in this report. Trading stocks and options should be considered risky. You should always consult with your financial advisors. And I've got tools in multiple platforms, but am an independent trader. My Google group is called Top Down Trader. It's what I use as a mailing list. You can control whether you're there or not there. So if you don't like what happens, you can always quit, which is nice. But bottom line is, it's where I share invites to free things like my mentoring session. I post videos and PowerPoints there that I won't post on YouTube for the reasons that I might be sharing my performance. And I'm a good guy, so why not join? Again, easy to quit. And when I move back to Discord, you'll get to continue membership for free. And I hope to see you there. If you're looking for the wealth charts video, I'll do that before the market opens Monday or Sunday night. I like to get a sense of where the futures are before I post that one. The one I do here is before I have any insight into that. I mentioned mentoring. I'm doing one next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Spots are limited. Registration links will be in the remarks below on the YouTube video, or there'll be a link in the Top Down Trader. Who should attend? If you do stocks or options, if you own my tools, if you have no interest in my tools, why not? If you want to learn a strategy that has been time tested and puts an edge for you to win in the markets, why don't you come and watch? I'll do an intro to top-down investing and why. We'll look at market analysis from markets, sectors, industry groups, and stocks. Show you a couple of my favorite scans that I do. And then I'll spend the last 30 to 45 minutes looking at how I use options as stock replacement. Is there a recession or near future? Well, you know, it's interesting. We've now gone a really considerable time since we broke over the zero line on the yield curve after the prior inversion. Historically, going back to the 80s, there's always been a recession. So you wonder if one is coming. We'll see. I can tell you it's not here. We have almost no evidence of credit tightness, and the last diffusion index or measure of economic activity was over 12, and minus 20 is when I get nervous. I won't say I'm nervous, but we got some big stuff this week. We got some delayed durable goods and plus durable goods minus transports. We've got consumer confidence that's not delayed. We've got the FOMC meeting. I don't think 5% of the people think we're going to get a rate cut. I think that as long as Powell doesn't come and say stuff that is hawkish, I don't think the market will do much on this, or at least unless there's a surprise, because I don't believe that they anticipate anything happening from a cut perspective. We got jobless claims on Thursday and then some delayed productivity. And then we do have a PPI that's up to date, as well as some delayed back stuff as well. And that'll be interesting to look at. Actually, It's December, so I guess it is delayed. And then we have some Fed speak on Friday. Fed's in a quiet period, so there won't be any Fed speakers until after the rate decision, or should we say the rate no decision. Boy, are there earnings this week. And there's never a time that I'm more reminded of this statement that I made 20 years ago. It's a judgment call to hold stocks over earnings dates. It's bad judgment to not know when your stock's earnings date is scheduled. Earnings in a tough market as we're in right now are not very forgiving. And by that, I mean, if you're wrong and your stock misses, you could see a pretty significant correction. And remember, it's not just did I beat on earnings, did I beat on revenue, was my margin good? It's what is next quarter going to look like? What does the year look like? So you have so many pieces that they could miss on. So I like to have a nice profit if I'm going to hold something into earnings. And if I'm going to hold it and I don't have that much of a cushion, then I'm going to look at some type of an option strategy probably so I can reduce some of my risk. But as you could see, especially on Wednesday, Microsoft, Meta, Tesla. Thursday, we got Apple, SanDisk, Visa, MasterCard in the morning. There are a lot of big companies there, IBM, ServiceNow, Starbucks, AT&T. It should be an interesting week, I'll put it that way. All right, let's go look at the charts. If we look at the end of the day on Friday, remember it was a 4-day week. End of the day Friday, VIX was up 2.04, closing at the top of its range. The Qs were up 0.32, Bitcoin 0.06, Spider 0.04. Diamonds, which have been doing very well, were down 0.5%, and IWM dropped the most, down 1.85%. If we look at the 5-day range, you can see a tough week for Bitcoin, down 6%, 0.5% on the spiders, 0.73 on the diamonds. Dollar was down almost 2%, and Russell was down 0.26. Remember, 5 days would include the prior Friday because it was a 4-day week. I'll say this differently. I look at my equity curve on the weekend, and the tool I use at Schwab doesn't update until the next day. So on Saturday, I get the full week. And boy, was it a volatile week. The crazy thing is, and probably similar on your end, is just like these indices, which closed really close to the where it began, so did I. Well, boy, a lot of volatility to not have much of a change. Clearly, Friday was a different day as big cap tech, and we talked about Microsoft, which I had purchased on Thursday, had a really good day on Friday. Again, if I'm mentioning something that I bought, it means I talked about it on that day. So I'm not going to say I bought something that I never bought. I may forget to say something that would be unintentional if I'm going to talk about a position. On the materials, up a little bit over 1%, leading sector. Staples, and then communications. That's from the open. My bad. 0.91 on materials, 0.78 on staples, 0.6 on communications, almost 0.6 on energy. The laggards were financials, industrials, and healthcare. If you look at the themes, cannabis, I pretty much ignore it because it's so volatile. It moves a lot. It just doesn't move. The stocks are very teeny weeny. It's a problem. Copper up 4.6, silver 2.67, social media 2.45, solar is getting strong 2.24, Southeast Asia 2.2, batteries 1.87 were some of the leaders, lithium, and laggards were biotech, genomics and biotech, home constructions as rates become a concern, Internet of Things, infrastructure, autonomous vehicles, transports were all down more than 1%. On the breadth, after Thursday's super strong market, I think it was Thursday's it was super strong, we're over 200 on both the NYSE and I think the NASDAQ on new highs minus new lows at 52 weeks. We backed down considerably, still over 100 on the NYSE and still positive. Give you a sense of how bad the breadth was on Friday. Only 25% of the S&P 1500 were up, 30% of the NASDAQ, and 33% of the NYSE. Our timing model, we ended the week last week with the weekly and a buy, and the daily showing some concerns. If we look at where we are right now, the spider is still in a sell on the daily. It's above the WMA and it's rallied, so it could flip early in the week. The Qs actually did flip. The question is, will they break above this trend line? The Russell remains in a buy on the daily, and the the diamonds actually pulled in close to the WMA. So 50-50 on the daily. When we look at the weeklies, you could see green, 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 and green, so all four. So intermediate term, we're still in an uptrend. The Qs turned around, and what was the other one that was up? And the Russell remains positive on the daily. So still says to be long this market with the two dailies that are questionable, close to switching back to buy. I think a little bit of concern is still warranted, so I feel good about those puts I bought. Let's take a look at the markets. So the spider, nice, beautiful, nice uptrend. Seasonality, maybe a few more days of weakness, then a rally up here until the middle of February, and then pullbacks is what the seasonality would suggest. We are in the middle of this recent range. Technically, I could probably draw something. I like to draw in my charts. They don't always mean anything, but I like to draw. So we are in this rising wedge, and we'll see if we break above. The beautiful thing here is we're sitting right on the 21, and after listening to Mike Webster on the IBD this on Friday on their nightly report, which was over an hour, 21 days a nice pace for support, and so it's sitting on support. It's got the 50 underneath this trend line. Here's the 100 and the 200. So maybe a couple days of sideways movement, work out some more of that overbought, which is pretty much resolved, and maybe we run higher. Nothing here is nefarious. The Qs, I would say the same thing. I mean, the Qs are going to have to break above this trend line here. But I look at the Qs and I see a market that above the 21, above the 50, above the 100 and the 200. Again, seasonality would say a couple more weekdays and then we go higher. I'd like to see a break above that trend line for some confirmation. If I look at the diamonds, beautiful uptrend, nothing's changed, sitting pulled to the 21 and bounced. If I look at the Russell, also has been doing well, but this is kind of a typical evening star formation, or in John Person lingo, his low close doji. But saying that, and again, seasonality suggests maybe a couple pullbacks for a little bit. Hold on a sec, what does that mean? Sorry about that. My family did a girls' weekend at Disney, and they just sent me a text that didn't make sense. So this is a potentially bearish pattern. It's occurring after a big run, so we'll have to watch it. The 21 EMA and the 17 simple are right here. We'll see if they hold. But right now, would I be a buyer or seller? I think this one I'm a little bit more concerned because of the candle pattern. On the week, start with the daily VIX. You could see the VIX on Friday actually rallied. Now, something that has bothered me is that if this market's supposedly doing well, then why are we running up on the VIX? And we're not coming down to this resting area down here. I think that elevated VIX keeps me a little bit concerned about what's going to happen, especially in the short term. Let's just put a weekly on this one. And you could see the weekly move. It traded up high, but it came right back. And again, on the weekly, you can see that same issue, which is if we are in a strong market here, then why am I have a rising trend line with higher lows and higher highs on the VIX? So maybe I should be a little bit concerned there. So I'll be a little bit concerned there. And then the dollar failed on its rally, and now it's breaking down. And notice I switched to the dollar futures because of that big distribution in UUP, which I don't know if I would say messing up the charts per se, but they were messing up my charts. Um, let's see. Let's take a look at commodities. Well, commodities are where it's been at. Gold and silver have been unbelievable. I've been in them, not as much as I wish I was because I took profits, and I'm still afraid we're going to see a reversal. Um, it's hard. I don't know where you get back in here. Um, it's had a massive run, all-time highs. High jump is at 100%. We're going to get a pullback at some point. I'd love to get a pullback to the 21 EMA and buy it off of there. I'm in some, just not enough. Gold, super, super strong. Silver. Now, we were talking, or Webby was talking about how this here was not a climax run. I think this, and he called it climactic action, but not necessarily a climax run. Looking here, um, this is a climax run as far as I'm concerned, and that makes you wonder what's going to happen there. So it'll be interesting to see, but I'd be taking some profits if I had a lot of gold and silver. When this thing corrects, it could come correct all the way down to the 21 in one day, and that would be over 20%. If we look at oil, oil gapped up on Friday. I guess that's good. Probably some of that was in with concern about what's going on in the U.S. with the weather. We'll see if it has any legs to it. You could see seasonality into February, end of February and early March is strong now for oil. Oil's certainly been languishing. Natural gas does what it does. It trades up to the 200 and it fails. So nothing changed there. I'd have to get above the 200 to interest me. And then the 10-year, after gapping up, did pull back, but it bounced off the 200. It was actually flat at the close on Friday, and the 30-year closed higher than it opened, but was down a bit, 0.08%. So gold and silver still look great, but it's not just gold and silver. Look at copper, palladium, platinum. It is just a massive, almost pan metal, especially if it's something that could be used in data centers rally. If we look at the buckets, we could see that the buckets have moderated. This is how many stocks on Thursday were above the Bollinger Bands in the NASDAQ and how many were above the Bollinger Bands in the Russell 2000. You can see how far they came down. They're not much below the Bollinger Bands, so you have not much above or below. Most of the stocks in the middle. I'd say the buckets have gone to neutral. Market breadth tool, you could see we're right off the highs on the NYSE, and the NASDAQ were not bad, but I think the NASDAQ here is just acting very similar to, oh, sorry about that. The NASDAQ is acting similar to, let me get this right, I want to say 120. The Qs, and that it's got to worry about getting above that. But they're both in recovery phase. The stocks above the moving averages got pretty ripe, especially on the Nasdaq. It's pulled back a little bit as it has on the NYSE. It got ripe. Nasdaq as well. You can see up down volume is positive. Look how strong it was the last couple of days. AD lines turn negative, and the dollar up down dollar volume is negative. Now those are supposed to be red, so I'll have to let Praveen know that something weird happened. And we'll get the color fixed. The numbers are correct, and you can see they're red over on the chart. The other breadth tool that I really like to look at is these green boxes, which represents the 13-week new high, new low. And across the board, 0.72, 0.72, 0.72, and 0.64. These came off of numbers that were not extremely high, but much higher on the prior candle. So 94 was on the spider on the prior candle, and on NASDAQ was 85. The Russell was 99. And I said Thursday it was guaranteed the market was going to pull back some, and certainly the Russell, which was the one most extended, did. So now we're neutral. So I don't have a signal that says we have to go up or go down. The charts say they want to go up. I'm a little bit concerned, and could it just be rotation we get? It could be. Let's look at some of the industry sectors and some of the leading stocks very quickly. I like ratio charts to tell me what's working because I could stand back and see materials are super strong, energy's been strong, staples, industrials, and even discretionary. And what's been weakening is technology has been weakening, communications trying to get back. Financials had a rough week, and healthcare is kind of neutral. Another way to look at it is I've been trying to come up with the right chart to look at the sectors, regular sectors, not at a timing. So let me show you what I'm doing now. And once I get comfortable this is the right way to look at it, I'll share. So I've combined the bongo, not on Bitcoin, but the others all have the high-low jump. I've got the 30 period WMA is in yellow, in purple is that 21-day exponential, in white is 50, and somewhere there's a 200 up here. This is the buy-sell signal. So we see that Bitcoin has been in a sell. See if there's anything interesting in the dots. And you can see the relative strength is below the moving average. So Bitcoin, it's trying to do something, but it's just struggling to get back above the moving averages. Now we'll add the high jump here. This is technology, which at best is going sideways with the sell signal. If we look at discretionaries in a nice uptrend again, pull back to the 100 and rallied, you could see it turned into a new buy signal, and the relative strength crossed over the moving average. Communications, which sold off, is now rallying, so we'll have to watch that. You can see a new buy that came in, so that's improved. Industrial still strong, still above the moving averages, still in a buy signal, but a little bit of a pullback in process. That's healthy. Not healthy, financials did not like earnings. First the big banks, and then we saw some of the regional banks. What did look strong or does look strong are some of the foreign banks and maybe some of the other foreign stocks as well. If we look at energy, despite the fact that oil just broke out and has been congestion, energy looks really good here. Now, energy's got some special things going on. Natural gas is way off of its lows. Concerns about storage of natural gas in Europe might impact some of the stocks. Other things about the energy that the data centers, nuclear and some of the other natural gas, even coal, are things that are interesting when you look at data centers. So energy looks good. Materials looks good. Pulling back and finding support is real estate. So that'll be interesting to see if that bounces this week. A defensive play. Another defensive play, utilities, is not so good. It's traded down to the 200 and bounced. Still has to get above the moving averages. Definite downtrend. Staples has broken out as we saw here. Defensive. Here is healthcare, and we can see healthcare is running up the 30 period WMA. Sell signal, but above the moving averages. We'll see what it does this week. We already looked at Bitcoin, so that gives me a sense of some of what's going on. And then I can look at some of the leading stocks and a couple of my favorite ETFs with the same picture. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Close that. I wanted that one. So Amazon. Bongos have gone blue. High jump is fine. Took out the moving averages. Went to a buy signal. Crossed over relative strength. I own Amazon. It was a nice day on Friday. I am hopeful that it goes higher here, especially if we're rotating into the mags. Apple, no. Still breaking down. Google, another one of my holdings, is nice uptrend. Bounced off the 21 there, still holding up here, still looks good. Meta, maybe. Meta Went to a buy signal on Thursday, took out the moving averages. I'd like to see it clear the 200. It's been in a downtrend. Look how long the weekly bongo's been red, but this one looks interesting. Netflix, it had a nice day on Friday. It's in that sweet spot of its seasonality, but do I believe Netflix is ready to run here? I got to sort out what's going on with Warner Brothers, and so do they. Tesla, I think Tesla is going to start running. Tesla looks interesting. Obviously, earnings are coming. NVIDIA, still for the most part, to me, is going sideways, waiting for earnings. Microsoft, why did I enter it on Thursday? FOMO, I'm not sure. I drew on a trend line. And during the day, it broke out of that trend line. Well, Friday, it had a great day. It really did. So better lucky sometimes than good. How far does it run? I don't know. We'll get above the moving average. We'll switch to a buy. Don't know. And I've got a tight leash on all these stocks. Labu had an awesome day on Thursday, sold off on Friday, still in a beautiful uptrend. We'll see if this turns out to be a false breakout from this consolidation. Pharma holding above its breakout, looks good. Data centers, what can you say? This was the breakout. Nice run up. And data centers are part of the leadership right now. And think of what goes into data centers. Somebody's got to build them. You need cement. You're probably going to need steel. You're going to need energy, whether it's nuclear, solar, hydrogen, constellation energy. You're going to need all kinds of wiring, copper, silver, optical. You're going to need memory chips. You're going to need SSD storage, and you're going to need NVIDIA chips. You're going to need some kind of cooling system because it's going to get hot as a mother. So you're going to have all kind of pumps and all other types of things. All the electrical components that go inside. And I'm just beginning what's part of this. The whole nuclear explosion right now, not that kind of explosion, but the growth and interest in the nuclear stocks is all because of these data centers. So data centers being up is positive for a lot of different sectors. Now, I do get a lot of questions about, does my timing model actually work on sectors and industry groups? And the answer, it does. And I'll just point yourself to when this thing really started running. Back here at 18, you could see a break above the 50. You had gap, volume, breakout, momentum. You had a double momentum signal, and you had the relative strength cutting above the moving average, which is exactly the signal I'm looking for to get into something. And then what else do we have here? ITA, this one's pulled back some. So we're in HWM, which had it's had a rough couple of days, but I bought some 25 puts on it, so I'm just holding still right now. All right, I look at puts as insurance. I don't have to hold them until the stock comes all the way up, but I hold the put when I buy it for protection until at least the stock stops falling. The stock stops falling. The JS layout is kind of the key part of my model because this is where I can do my top-down ETF analysis. It's a great way of, from a top-down perspective, since I'm long, I might go into the top-down area. I might look at, let's look at 5-day momentum. So not just 1-day momentum. And leadership is materials, energy, and staples. And then within those, these are the industry groups in those sectors. So what we might do here is the same sort. And let's take the top 10. The 187 stocks, and then what I typically will do is I will trim them by going to $500,005, and that gets me down to 128. And I could do the same 5-day set 5-day momentum. Let's go through. Costco looks really interesting here. I think Costco is way too expensive from a price to earnings multiple. It trades at 56. It grows in the 20% or less. Earnings are just out. Next earnings are not, we don't have a date yet, but they're going to be sometime in March. I just look at that multiple, it gets me scared. But it's got earnings growth, occasionally gets a surprise, and it's clearly the best retail stock we have, and it's broken out, and it's got strong seasonality. Royal Gold, one of the many gold stocks. Now, could you buy this here? Well, if gold keeps going up, you can buy all of them. They're going to go higher, but when's gold going to stop? The sky is extended. It's gone flatline at or near 100. What's it at? It's at 100. Here is a miner, that same thing. Can you buy it here? Boy, it's a risky play up here. Ascent Solar, now there's some interesting solar plays. I like Run and First Solar. We'll look at them in a few minutes. AEM is a little bit more of a mixed miner. Now, the buy opportunity wasn't long ago. It was probably taking this line out here, and you still had a nice little run. But again, what's the high jump here? Well, it's only 98. It's too high for me. Wheat and metals. Looks great. It's just extended. Newmont. So I hope you own some of these. I do. And again, they're going to pull back eventually. You're going to have one of these. We just don't know when. AU is another one. And the interesting thing, if you look at things like the IBD 50 from Investor's Business Daily, if you look at the best of Woodward and Brown, some of my bullish lists or scans, they're almost all metal, gold and silver companies. Now we're seeing some of the steel companies come in. So at least this one had a recent cup, maybe a handle and a breakout. Steel Dynamics, earnings are not too, well, they're Monday. So never mind, I'm not buying it, but 172 versus 136. That's up 25, 30%. Pays a 1.5% dividend. Franco-Nevada Gold. Here's Nucor Steel. These things have gotten so expensive and had big runs. MT is another steel company. Big run. So that's one way I might look at what's leading. I'm not finding a lot that are buyable right now because things have moved so much. So there's other ways I can address that. If I look at who has the most impulses, VOXR, well, breaking out here. Cheap stock, what do they do? Highlight here. Mining, royalty, and streaming, of course. TTE, Total Energies, a nice fresh breakout. This is a integrated oil and gas company. This one is not too extended. Earnings are 211. ERO. There's something wrong here with the data. USAU, US Gold, a cheap one. Well, it's not cheap anymore. Underwriter Labs. Nice breakout here. Sort of a cup and a handle and a breakout. Suncor. Energy. Integrated Energy. SBSW's Gold. Here's Run. This is one of the ones that I liked. It had a false breakout and failed, but it looks interesting here. Earnings are not to February 26, so I got a month. It's coming out of a squeeze. It had a breakout the last two sessions. Relative strength at OBV looks good, if not extended. And if I look at the fundies, I could see, look at the growth rate. And it's got a PE of 60. So it's growing more than the PE. I think Sunrun looks interesting here technically. Pabst Blue Ribbon, also known as Petrobras, breaking out. This thing historically has not been great. It does this all the time and then it pulls back. And I remember years ago when they had an announcement that they had the world's biggest reserve and the stock went crazy, it still came back. National Grid, I think this is another thing that matters with data centers. Now, the only concern I might have would be there's probably some trend line in here, and we're sort of at the top of the channel, so that might make me careful. MTA, another mining company. So you see the theme: mining, silver, steel, and a lot of extended stocks. So that's one way of doing top down. We recently introduced something new that I just want to show you because I know that not everybody watches my during the week videos. If I go in the impulse, up top tells me the groups I'm looking at. You might, in a market that is favoring large caps, not want to look at all my stocks. You might want to look at just the Russell 1000 or the S&P 1500 or the S&P 500. But what we're going to click on here is the ETFs and give it a second to run. So now I want to first kill the filters, and you can see that we have 3,878 ETFs. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I want to kill all of them that have less than 500,000 shares traded daily. It brings me down to 526. I'm going to open up this fancy tool here, which is going to divide it. And let's say that I have interest in biotech, and I wanted to buy the components of the IBB, which might be different. They are from the LABU. Click on IBB and watch what happens. It basically just opened up with the components of the IBB, which are 240 some stocks. I think that's pretty cool. So we just talked about data centers, DTCR. So you can take your favorite ETF. Remember, I hid those that are really small, and it will give you the components of that ETF. So that might be one way to do some top-down trading, more at a theme rather than at the index level or industry group. I recently put together a number of themes and the stocks in the themes and gave them to Praveen. We're just trying to figure out the best way to come up with an industry index that doesn't have to be recalculated every time you run the program. But pretty soon we're going to add a button for themes. That'd be another way of driving through into emerging and developing themes. And I will continue to update that list as new themes become interesting. And then we have the old-fashioned ways to go back to the base. We'll go to the stocks only. And I'm going to show you something interesting here. I don't know why that did that. Let's see what happens here. Okay. So now we are in stocks only. I'm going to open this up and it's going to do something different. Let's say that I thought Netflix. Nah, it's too easy. Let's just go with AUM, a gold. AU, gold, which one? AEM. This is reverse of the ETF. Let's say you wanted to build a watch list of things that are similar. So here I hit on AEM, which is gold, and what it's doing here is creating a list of stocks that have some similarities. So kind of creating an ETF with different industry groups around a theme created by a single stock. That's kind of cool too. Praveen is so good at this stuff. So the last thing I just wanted to review a couple things. We're now at 39 minutes. Think how much work we've done, how much we've digested the market, looked at industry groups, sectors, big stocks, looked at ETFs. I like to go to the main list and run my scans. And my favorite scan is the A plus if I'm long. And this one had four things, BBAR. Now, this is that theme of foreign banks. So here is an Argentinian bank. Potentially breaking out of this area here, sort of a cup and a handle and a breakout. Why did this trigger? Well, all it takes is two momentum dots It's got three in a row. It's got a squeeze. Relative strength at OBV looks good. And you notice where the number is here. It's nowhere close to being extended. That one looks interesting. MITK, technology play. What do they do? Digital identity. I'll tell you what's really cool now is TSA pre-check. If you have clear, it's probably a digital ID as well. You don't even have to see a TSA agent anymore. Clear verifies you, and then you stand in front of a camera, and it tells you to go through the bag check. You skip the TSA person. Upwork looked really interesting. And again, it's in an uptrend, pull back to the 50, double momentum out of a squeeze, good relative strength at OBV, and not extended. And then here is a, well, it used to be a small gold, US gold. I get nervous with some of these little guys, and something that's not extended right now, you almost have to be a little bit nervous about them because they're laggards by definition. And you can see the stock came from nothing. Now, I will tell you, the fun stuff is when you have something like KGC, and on this weekly chart, it too came from nothing, and now it's 40 bucks. And another one is like Ego. These are stocks that were $8 to $10 forever. And because of this craziness, this thing's over 40. I mean, when do you sell this? That becomes an interesting question. So of these, I think the BBAR is interesting and Upwork looked interesting. Another one to look at might be the A scan, which is a pullback uptrend with a squeeze with either momentum or a breakout. Alaska Airlines, they had earnings out. Not that excited. Here's your BBAR again. That's more. CCK, Crown Holdings, Dycal. This was one, or D-Local rather. Pulled back pretty hard. We should get out of the weekly, Jeffrey. So let's go back and look at Elk. Broke up. Trying to make a move. Now we're in minutes because I hit the wrong thing. Let's try that one more time. There we go. Elk does look okay. I thought it did. Had to get to the right time frame. I mean, it's breaking out of that trend line. I'm just not a big airline owner. BBAR, we already looked at, breaking out of that trend. CCK, kind of choppy and sideways. D-Local Limited, is it going to have a breakout off of the 50? GCT, GigaCloud Technology. This thing has had a history. Look at weekly. Major run up, pretty big pullback. It's kind of getting close to those prior highs. Wow. That's a concern. Will they break out? And if they do, that's a base going back 2 years almost. That would be interesting if that breaks out. So I'm going to be watching that one. I wouldn't buy it until it takes out that line. Midgie? What is Midgie? Mawson Infrastructure. No. Here's that MITK again. Again, I don't know anything about the company. But it's breaking out from that trend line, and earnings are February 5th. Move. Big breakout. When I see something like that, I'll come over to the news. Why is it gapping? Because of a long-term NVIDIA H200 GPU lease to support secure enterprise AI workloads. All right, so that's interesting, but not a reason for me to buy. NOK, Nokia, I mean Ericsson, Nokia, these old names are actually looking interesting here. TTAM, Titan America, and Upwork again. So those are some that hit, and probably again, I like BBAR. I think GCT looks interesting, and Upwork. Now I went through my thousands of stocks and let me show you some of the ones that I liked and some of the stories around them. These are not all stocks that I'm going to buy. It is a watch list. A watch list is just that. It's a list that I put together that I will be putting on little boxes on my trade station looking for new signals. I might pick my favorite 5 and put some conditional orders in a think or swim. So let's just go through. AG, overbought, yes. Extended, yes. But if I want more gold and silver exposure. Amgen, probably the big kahuna of the biotech. And I guess what I would look at here is we're taking out, it's not what I wanted to hit. My bad, go to the horizontal line. If we take that line out, maybe that would be interesting. I think it would be. Amazon we looked at earlier and I said I liked it. Let's go on the daily chart. APLD, this is in the data center space. Great seasonality here. Earnings are not to April. Let's take a look at what we got here. Does not make money. Does have revenue growth. Okay. Look at that seasonality. APLD flag in here looks interesting. American Sports, if it takes out that line. Ascend Pharmaceuticals, this is a biotech. Put it on a weekly. You can see this thing's been a great performer. Consistent performer, decent seasonality, and kind of breaking out of the sideways range. AVNS was a medical tech company, broke out above the 200. AXIA, why did I like this one? Let's see what it says. Generation, transmission, commercialization of electricity in Brazil. That's another Brazil story. B-Bar we looked at. BIP is Brookfield Infrastructure. This is a company that is involved in building out data centers. You've got a squeeze with momentum and breakout with good relative strength at OBV off of the 50. Benet, God only knows what's going on here. I put it here mostly to watch. I don't have any data. It's an IPO or it's a new entry. The stock went crazy after hours on Friday. CCJ, the best, in my opinion, in breed of the nuclear stocks. But when did you want to buy this one? You wanted to be buying it on that bar. So I'm long CCJ from that point. Hard to get in here, just like it's hard to get into gold and silver. CDE is another silver miner. CM, again, international banks. Here's Canadian Imperial pulling into the 50 in a squeeze with good relative strength in OBV. Critical metals, commercial metals company. There's one. Metals are hot right now. Just highlight it, tells you what it does. Manufactures, fabricates steel and metal products, related materials. International company. We showed you steel was doing well. CNTA, Contessa Pharmaceuticals regaining the 50. Not that exciting. Core, I always talk about Cardinal Health, Core, Cencora, and McKesson when the market goes through periods of turmoil, setting up on the 50. CVS, I talked about that when I took it on Thursday, and it broke out from resistance. It's not a big breakout. It's kind of boring. Earnings are not they're soon, February 10th. DLO, we looked. This is Dilocal, and it's sitting right on the 50. We looked at this a few minutes ago. This guy I thought was interesting. Dynex Capital, nice steady uptrend. Yes, it's getting extended, but look what it pays for a dividend, 13%. Enbridge is a MLP, so that means it probably pays a dividend, and it pays one of 6.28%. The stocks involved in transmission have been beaten up of late, but Starting to look good, and this guy broke out. EIK, Endeavor Steel, again, the same story. It's extended. Be careful. Fuel cell, I've just been intrigued by this guy's story. It's a stock that's never gone anywhere. It's been around forever. It's a cheap stock. And now you look at what it does. Hydrogen plays, fuel cell power plants for distributed baseload generation. And there's the magic word, data centers. FCX used to be kind of a pure play copper, and then they bought some oil and other stuff, but a little bit of a sideways movement, probably going to go higher. It's a copper play. The other solar company that I'm interested in is First Solar. Um, this is to me, the big guy in the group. It's not pretty technically. Earnings are not for another month, but look at trades at a multiple of 11. It's looking at 522 versus 365, so about $1.60. So it's growing at about 40%. It has a PE of 11. Um, it's turned around its earnings per share growth. I think First Solar is interesting. Do I like it where it's at? No, but I'm going to be watching it. We already talked about GigaCloud setting up. Earnings are February or March 2nd. Gilead. Gilead is one of my favorite biotechs that broke out this week. Maybe it'll pull back and give you a chance to get in. Hut Hut or HT, now called H-World, is a bunch of Chinese hotel brands. Notice nice uptrend, sideways movement, so it's no longer extended or as extended. IMMX is one of the biotechs I looked at. Why? Because it pulled into the 50 and it's moving. INTR, banking, securities, insurance, brokerage in Brazil. Brazil's hot right now. IREN, this is like HUT and others, is a Bitcoin miner. And Bitcoin miners had an issue where they had to have tremendous amounts of energy. So who else needs that energy? Data centers. So they've now become experts in energy. And these guys have contracts with a number of data centers. ITUB is another international bank breaking out here. Just look at where it's at. Brazil. Does it pay any dividend? 7% dividend. LAC is a lithium play, Lithium America, low cost lithium play. Lilly, I don't know if I'd buy it right here. I'd like to see it move up. Maybe take that thing out. But I think Lilly, because of Mounjaro, their weight loss drug, still has room to go. I'm going to comment about Novo in a second. Meta, we talked about it before. Is it going to get back above the 200? It's interesting. METC, metallurgical coal, Ramco Resources. When natural gas is up as much as it is, coal gets in favor. And there's still plenty of coal use worldwide. I know from a lot of us in the greens have a hard time, being positive coal. Pays a teeny weeny dividend of not teeny, 4.47%. Microsoft, I mentioned, I liked the move it had last week on Thursday, and I bought into it. Friday, it had a nice day. Micron, kind of looks like silver and gold. The question is, can you still get into this? And, I don't know. I mean, it's obviously an expensive stock. I just want to go and look at earnings growth over a period of time. So let's just blow this up. This is market surge. It's projecting in 21 $43 of earnings and a growth rate of 30. So I'll just go to my iPhone, because I could do it in my head, but I want to make a point. If its PE drops from 35 to 30 and it hits $43, that's a $1,290 stock. Believe it or not, this thing's undervalued. But like silver and gold, will it sell off on the expectation of worsening fundamentals and trap you before a big drop? Be careful with it, but I think Micron's still a buy. Newmont, one of the bigger gold companies, again, can you buy it here? It's extended. Nvidia going sideways into earnings. This is mostly for me to watch, which is why I put it in this list, because I look at this list before the market closes every day. Come on, Nvidia. I want, all right, so let's go one more time. Nvidia. All right. So Nvidia sideways earnings are the 25th. So we got about a month. So Lilly is the king with Mounjaro. Novo Nordisk just came out with an oral weight loss pill that's extremely effective and cheaper and easier to administer than the injectable. I think this thing runs. I'm going to buy some of this and accumulate a position. It's not going to come in now, and the earnings are in about a week or 2 weeks on the 4th. It's going to have 90 cents versus 91 cents. But I think all eyes will be looking at what the oral Wegovy does. PAAS is a silver rather, beautiful run. I don't know how you get into this. It's extended, but you watch it for a pullback. PAGS. If first you don't succeed, try it again. We'll see if it can break above that trend line, horizontal line. Royalty Pharma. Let's look at this on a weekly, see if it's actually going higher. Nice uptrend on the weekly. Sideways into here. I think this one looks interesting. Um, I'd like to see it break out before I bought it. Run we looked at when the solars, this one did break out already. SBS is another, is this Brazilian? Let's take a look. Sao Paulo, I think that's in Brazil. Another bank. Actually, this is a utility, my bad. A Brazilian utility. So I like the chart pattern breaking out here above the 50. Let's see what the fundies tell me. It pays 1.5% dividend, not a rapid grower, but it will go up with Brazil. SLF, Sun Life, kind of a cup and a handle. We'll see if it can break out. SQM, this is a miner of much more than lithium, fertilizers and other things. Obviously, you wish you would, and I do too, by the way. This was the time to buy it on this up here. Again, I'm not buying things like this. They're too far extended, but I'm watching them. We already looked at STLD. Same thing. This one maybe gives you an opportunity to get in here. Stone Company. I liked the candle it had on Thursday when it took out the 50 and the 200. It had a double momentum, which is exciting. Relative strength and OBV look good, not extended. I like this one here. This is an international play. FinTech, e-commerce, multiple channels in the Cayman Islands. Where does it do its work? Brazil. TMC, another one of these metal companies. trying to break out. Tesla, I mentioned, looks good here, broke above the 50, really held it on the week Friday. UNFI, United Natural Foods, breaking out off of the 50. Upwork, we've seen that a few times. I kind of like this breakout here. USAR, rare earth metals. I am in, so I MP, and this is my list, so I may not have added it, which looks fine. And then I've got a position in CRML. And then this one is USAR. They all look exactly the same. That's Upwork. Probably need to have some of this in your portfolio, whichever one you pick. MP is one the government's already invested in. The 4Us, energy fuels, another nuclear play. The one that I'm in, that I've mentioned before, is CCJ, Cameco, which is probably the big guy. Is in a nice run. VIST is another oil and gas play. And guess where it's at? Latin America, this one's in Mexico. Vista Energy. And then WMB is another MLP, so transmission lines. Is it going to finally break out of this area? I'd have to see it break out before I chase, but I bet this one pays a dividend. 3.5%. So we've looked at top down, bottoms up, done a couple scans, looked a lot at the market, went through a lot of stocks tonight. No, you can't buy all of them. If I had to pick the 5 that I'm going to pick, I haven't picked them yet. But in my mind, I'm going to pick something from Brazil and the banks. I'm going to pick something in probably pick another miner. I do, and I just dump in the A pluses here. Filter for both. We'll see what we get. That BBAR, I still like that one. It's an Argentinian bank, and Upwork. So there's a number of things I'm looking at. I know there's too many stocks. I just like going through a list. My gut feeling is this is another volatile week ahead of us, but seasonality says we start to rally into the middle of February. We'll see if we get that. We'll see you on Monday night. Be careful. I think this is still a time where we could see some volatility. I don't watch anybody else's videos until I finish this, except I did listen to Webster on IBD Live because I find him fascinating and brilliant. Mike Webster, and I listen to the things he does on the weekend. After I get done with this, I'll go listen to other people and see what they think. I don't want to color my mind with other people's thoughts. That's why I do it afterwards. Hope you can join me for the mentoring, whether you got my tools or not. For the 3 people that are left at the end, I got a new release to talk about, and I'll talk about it at the mentoring. I've had a number of people say to me, Jeff, I really like that scanning tool you have, but I want to use my trading view, or I have Metastock and I bought your indicators there. Can't we just get the scanner? So the answer is yes. We've now built the scanner as a standalone tool to analyze the market from a top-down perspective, and this will be officially released next week. I got a few more tweaks I want to do, but it's everything that I do without the charts. Have a great one, and we'll see you Monday night.